and welcome to Thumb Wins End of the Road in Michigan podcast. Each week, we select one of our amazing stories about the Great Lakes region and the tip of Michigan's thumb. These are taken from thumbwind.com and presented here so that you can listen to it anytime, anywhere. Today, we have a travel log of a small town in the upper thumb of Michigan. Harbor Beach lies on the sunrise side of the eastern shore of Lake Huron. It is a small town with a huge harbor. It's a neat place to visit, and we want to reveal some of the things you can do here. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's tale from the end of the road. 6 fascinating places to see at Harbor Beach, Michigan. As the world's largest freshwater man-made harbor, the port of Harbor Beach, Michigan, is an ideal stopping point for sailors making their way up along Lake Huron's shore. Harbor Beach offers sailors and boaters a welcome break and an ideal provisioning point with its protected port and town that steps away from the marina. If you find yourself with a few extra hours, there are some great little sightseeing and interesting trips. Some are within walking distance, while some will require an Uber ride from dockside. Number 1, Harbor Beach Lighthouse. If you're in the harbor on a Saturday and have $20, you can get a tour. It's a 10-minute boat ride and guided tour of this spark plug light located at the tip of the breakwall. You can access 4 of the 6 levels of this working light and get a taste of local history. Plan on taking about 1 hour for the entire tour. If the weather is ideal, the best advice is to take your best pictures on the ride back with the sun higher in the sky. The fee covers the lighthouse trip and entry to the museum. Number 2, Grice House Museum. This estate is a prime example of a mid-19th century working home in the days before electricity. With its period kitchen, parlor, sewing room, and bedroom, you can imagine what life was like in the late 1800s. There are collections and artifacts of local maritime history, history of the Great Lakes, and early lumbering in Harbor Beach. This home was constructed in 1874 by James G. Grice and is listed in the National Registry of Historic Places. On the grounds, there is a one-room schoolhouse from the early 1900s. The school is furnished with desks, books, and the stove typically found in one-room country schools of that era. The Grice House is a short walk from the Harbor Beach Marina on the north end of town. Tours for the museum are available from Memorial Day to Labor Day. Hours: Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, 1 to 4 p.m., Saturday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., Sunday, 1 to 4 p.m., and by appointment by calling 989-479-3363. Admission is $5. Number 3, Frank Murphy Museum. One of the most famous individuals in the thumb was Frank Murphy. He was one of Michigan's most notable and accomplished politicians. He was the mayor of Detroit, governor of Michigan, Governor General, U.S. High Commissioner of the Philippine Islands, Attorney General of the United States, and finally a U.S. Supreme Court Justice. Born in Harbor Beach in 1890, he graduated from the University of Michigan Law School and returned to Harbor Beach to practice law early in his career. Frank Murphy was a national defender of civil rights. He was an author to the dissent position of the Supreme Court in the Korematsu versus the United States, which upheld the legality of Japanese internment camps during World War II. Murphy called the decision legalization of racism. A plaque highlighting his famous position is outside the museum. The Frank Murphy Memorial Museum south of the marina on Huron Street next to the Visitor Center at 142 South Huron Avenue. Tours for the museum are available from Memorial Day to Labor Day. Hours: Tuesday free, noon 4 p.m., Saturday to Sunday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., and by appointment. Admission: adult, $2, child, $1. Number 4, Point O'Barks Lighthouse. This is well north of Harbor Beach but worth the drive. The Point O'Barks Lighthouse ranks among the 10 oldest lighthouses in Michigan. It is an active lighthouse maintained by the U.S. Coast Guard remotely located in Lighthouse County Park on Lake Huron near Port Hope, Michigan, in Huron County. The name Point O'Barks is French for Point of Little Boats, a descriptor of the shallow shoals and reefs that lurk beneath these waves, presenting a hazard to boats as they round Michigan's thumb. This historic landmark marks the opening of Saginaw Bay. You can climb to the top of the lighthouse on Memorial and Labor Day weekends. Number 5. Hunter's Bar. This institution has been keeping Harbor Beach, Michigan, served with ice-cold beer since 1938. It's like stepping back to when the area was considered up north with its rustic and rugged and knotty pine and casual, comfortable atmosphere. Considered to have the best fish in the area and the Flying Cheese Sticks' good craft beer selection. Known as more of a local bar, but it's a favorite biker stop. Number 6. Kayak the Harbor Beach Harbor. Rent a kayak for a few hours and check out the lighthouse, harbor, and even a few nearby sunken ships. The wreck of the George H. Watt is a short distance from the kayak launch at James H. Lincoln Park. To the south is the Dorcas Pendle and John Wesley shipwrecks. History of the largest man-made harbor on the Great Lakes. In 1871, shipping in the Great Lakes was nearing its height. Over 30,000 trips were made past the eastern thumb shore. However, there were no harbors in which ships could take refuge during the fall storms that were common across the region. The 80 miles between Port Huron and Saginaw Bay's mouth is described as a long stony beach along a cliff-lined shore with boulders and dangerous ledges. Ships steered a course 2 to 3 miles offshore, where they risked being fully exposed to the weather. In 1871, it was one of the busiest stretches for shipping in the entire Upper Lakes. In 1871, Congress allocated $1 million for construction of a harbor of refuge within the 150 miles between Port Huron and Thunder Bay at Alpena. A survey was commissioned in May of 1872 to test the lake bottom's holding power. The Lake Survey steamer, Ada, began bottom testing at Point O'Barks and headed south. For 30 miles, the steamer stopped every tenth of a mile and dropped an 820-pound anchor to test holding capacity. Not happy with the results, the Ada tested an additional 20 miles of shore and found that the area off of Sand Beach and Port Hope as potential sites. Sand Beach's site was chosen not because it was any better than Port Hope but because it required 3,000 feet less breakwall. The area around Sand Beach in 1872 was pretty remote, even for the pioneering standards of the time. It had no merchants and no manufacturing except a few shingle makers. In 1873, the area became the site of one of the most ambitious harbor projects on the Great Lakes. This project was known as the Harbor of Refuge at Sand Beach. When it was completed, the town sprung up with a railroad station and post office supporting the harbor. Harbor Beach has a rich history. In 1883, when the harbor was completed, Harbor Beach became the largest freshwater port in the world. This 1 mile by 3 miles long port with 650 acres of anchorage was enclosed by 3 break walls with 2 entrances. One is the north and the other at the east. This enabled shipping protection in the 150-mile lake run after leaving Port Huron. The city later became home to major industries, including a starch and power plant. Life-saving station at Huron Milling Dock, Harbor Beach, 1929. Harbor Beach, Michigan is also home to a continuous life-saving service and Coast Guard presence since 1881. A life-saving service station was established in Sand Beach, then replaced in 1909. In 1935, a new Coast Guard station was built offshore. Today the USCG is manned year-round by Coast Guard personnel. This concludes this week's story. Thank you for taking the time to listen to Thumb Wind's End of the Road podcast. If you like this kind of tale, you are invited to subscribe to our podcast. Just search for The End of the Road in Michigan from wherever you're listening from. Please watch for and download our next podcast and take a moment to give us a review. Have a great day.